Welcome to the SMS podcast. I'm here today to review The Crow 2024, starring Billy Skarsgard, Fucka Twigs, Jack Houston's dad, whoever else is in this movie. What is this movie about? Why did this come out? Why did they remake it? Because this movie only made $4 million opening weekend, which is terrible, obviously. It made less than Borderlands, which is going to be the next movie I do on this podcast. If my guest isn't bullshitting, because Latina women are insane, who cares? So let's get into The Crow. What is this movie about? This movie starts off with Eric as a child. If you know who Eric is, obviously that's The Crow. Okay. So we start off, he lives in a trailer park in Eastern Europe for some reason, because this movie's obviously set in Eastern Europe. Not set, shot in Eastern Europe, but it's supposed to be set in America, which is insane. Apparently, I read somewhere that it's set in Detroit. Yeah, right. I know Detroit is a wasteland because of 2008, but that doesn't mean it looks like Eastern Europe. So after we see young Eric, we cut to Fucka Twigs in Eastern Europe, Detroit, and she gets a phone call from her bestie named Zadie with a Z, which, God. And Zadie's paranoid because Danny Houston's after her ass, because she sent this video, which we don't find out until later in the movie, like the start of the third act. What's on this video? And it's so dumb. So then Fucka Twigs realizes that she's already getting chased. So she purposefully bumps into the police because she has this concoction. She has coke, pills. I wouldn't be surprised if there was fucking heroin in there. So then we cut to fucking Danny Houston, who I guess wanted to buy a new house, so he started in this shitty movie. He immediately whacks Zadie because he has these powers in which people just do what he says, literally. His powers kind of look cool. So you then find out later on that he has a deal with the devil, and that's why he's immortal. Some stupid shit. I mean, they just tell you. So afterwards, we see Fucka Twigs get sent to this rehab center, which looks like a prison, but it's not. Of course, Bill Skarsgard is also there, but the way it's portrayed, it seems like he locked himself up there voluntarily. Of course, it doesn't get established. So Fucka Twigs immediately wants the D, which makes sense because she's in rehab. What else is she gonna do there? So then we get these scenes of them in rehab, of them basically just looking at each other because they want to fuck. Eventually, we see this woman and one of his goons in the car, and you realize that's Fucka Twigs' mom. Obviously, they're there to kill her. So when they pull up, Fucka Twigs is immediately paranoid, and Bill Skarsgård is like, I'm about to check it out, because he has this weird-ass accent throughout the whole movie. One scene, it's a New York accent. Another scene, it's probably his native accent, and it's crazy. So they just plan to escape, and when they do escape, we get the weirdest needle drop of the movie. Fucking Joy Division. So they hitchhike back to Eastern Europe, Detroit. They get to Fucka Twigs' friend's house. That's what she says. And of course, when this happens, they start banging, they start doing drugs, of course. They get to know each other. One of these scenes, they are in the bathtub together. Fucka Twigs says, if you ever stop loving me, I want you to love me harder. What the fuck? I don't know if that line's worse than Fucka Twigs telling Billy Skarsgård what she likes about him, and she straight up says, what I admire about you is that I thought that you were so brilliantly broken. It's crazy. I mean, not even Meryl Streep can deliver these lines. I feel bad for Fucka Twigs. Afterwards, we cut to this detective that clearly isn't American. He contacts Danny Houston. So there's this character in the movie that is in the movie for no reason. This piano prodigy that I guess Danny Houston's gonna eventually kill. But she literally has nothing to do in the movie. She's just there in the movie. I'm pretty sure there's got to be like some deleted scenes with her in it. The crooked cop informs Danny Houston that we found Zadie's body, and he's paranoid that they're gonna find the video and they're gonna be exposed, even though why would you care? You run the city. Like, no, they're not gonna do anything. Even if you do get exposed, who's gonna find you? You're a supervillain. You have the powers of a god. It doesn't make any sense. So then we see Shelley and Eric hanging out some more. They go out with her friends, apparently. It looks like a Hot Topic commercial. So then they're at the club and they're living it up, this Eastern European-ass club. And we see the guy from the video named Dorm, and he just goes up to her. He's like, Shelley, you gotta go. You gotta run away. You gotta get out of here. And Eric notices. He's like, what the fuck is going on here? So Shelley comes back and tells Eric that we have to run, Eric. Eric's like, what the fuck is going on here? So they go back to Eric's apartment and they get ambushed by Danny Houston's goons. They get bags put over their head. Honestly, I was confused on why they didn't just try to bite the bag. Because the bag is literally in Eric's mouth and Fucka Twigs is just dying. They could have done something, but oh well. They obviously both die. But immediately, we get this weird-ass scene. Eric gets out of the lake and he follows this crow. And the crow goes to this abandoned train station. And we finally meet this spirit, the guy from the trailers, who's like, you have the power of a god. And he explains to Eric that you died in such a tragic way that the soul cannot rest until he gets his revenge. And Eric's just like, what the fuck are you talking about? I need to get out of here. Because he probably thinks he's high as fuck, which he probably is. So immediately this guy pushes him into a pool and Eric wakes up in his apartment. So then we see the dirty cop there, and the dirty cop is like, get out, boy, because obviously he's Eastern European. And Eric's like, I don't know what the fuck's going on. Can you please help me? And the cop shoots him point blank in the chest. But of course, Eric rises right back up because he has the powers. Even though these powers in the movie make no sense. He has them at first, but then he doesn't have them. It makes no sense at all. We won't get into that. He rises back up and he kills the dirty cop. Stabs him in the neck. Immediately, he realizes that he has healing powers. There's this gross shit in which he puts his intestines back in his stomach, which doesn't really make sense. But okay, then we see Eric on this bridge and you see Shelley again. He's like, Shelley, no! And he immediately comes back to this underworld, wherever the fuck it's called, limbo, purgatory. And he realizes that both him and Shelley are dead. But they can both be brought back to life if he takes down Danny Houston, because what Danny Houston is doing, sacrificing innocent people for the devil, which isn't the right balance to the world, something like that. So afterwards, Eric goes sees his buddy to get a gun from him, and the guy's like, what you need a gun for? And he's like, Eric literally says nothing. So I guess the guy assumes that Eric's gonna kill himself. I have no idea. Or maybe that'll take the people who killed Shelley down. I didn't really get that from this movie because obviously this movie is basically Lil Peep fanfiction. So anyways, afterwards, he goes to Shelley's funeral. He finds Shelley's mom's there. He has a gun on her and he's like, why the fuck did you do this to Shelley? And Shelley's mom tells him that you can't go after this guy. He has this crazy power. So they go to Shelley's mom's place, I assume, and Eric goes through all her old shit and he finds this badge, which is Danny Houston's company because Shelley obviously used to work for him. So then Eric is just walking out on the streets of Eastern Europe, Detroit, and he just randomly bumps into one of the people that killed him and Shelley. And he goes into the car. He's like, I want names. I want who you work for. I want them all. And of course, the guy tries to pull out a gun on him, and Eric shoots him in the head. Immediately afterwards, he sees the rest of Danny Houston's goons and goes after them, and he jumps on their fucking car and he tries to bring him down, and he gets thrown off the car, and he immediately gets ran over by a fucking truck, which was pretty cool, I'm not gonna lie. He then limps back, and then his bones just snapping into place. He even had to snap one of his bones back in. So then we see Danny Houston go to Shelly's mom's house, and Shelly's mom just tells him everything, like, yeah, I told Eric that you killed him, that she regrets this deal that she made with him. I assume it's either wealth or immortality, and that she should have died instead. Immediately afterwards, Danny Houston just goes up to her ear and whispers, and she jumps off the balcony like Lady Gaga's friend that she apparently sacrificed. All while this is happening, the young prodigy is there, and I'm pretty sure that's the last we see of her in this entire movie, because obviously her scenes were cut out. So the next scene, we see Eric pull up on Shelly's friend that was in the video, and he tells Billy Skarsgard that him, Shelly, and Zadie used to do drugs from Danny Houston. They used to party with him, which sounds like people I know. So anyways, Shelly's friend tells him about this video and tells him where to find it. So that's when Eric then finds the video, and you realize what the video is, and it's literally just Danny Houston whispering in Shelly's ear, and immediately Shelly kills this rando, and that's all the video is. It's even worse than the twist of the Batman. Remember that shit? So obviously Eric is distraught. He's like, damn, I thought I knew her. So immediately afterwards, Eric goes to his buddy's apartment to talk about Shelly, and at the same time, Danny Houston's goons pull up, and Eric fights back a little, but he gets knocked down, and his friend gets shot point blank in the head, which is wild. So then Eric fights back some more, but eventually he tries to take on this big goon, and this motherfucker shoots him in the stomach with the shotgun, and Eric gets knocked down, and he falls in the bathtub, which of course it's filled with water. So he gets transported immediately back to the underworld, which makes no sense because obviously he's immortal. I guess whenever he goes into water, he goes to the underworld. But when he gets sent there, he gets told that he doesn't have the power anymore because he doesn't believe in Shelly anymore. He doesn't love her, unconditional love, all that bullshit. And Eric's like, no, you can't do this, no. And Eric makes this deal with him. He's like, wait, so why don't I just bring her back and I'll take Danny Houston out? And he's like, okay, I'll do it. So this guy, he slashes his hand, he slashes Eric's hand to finally give him these powers of the Crow, which makes no sense at all because I thought he had the powers the whole time because he's fucking regenerating like Deadpool or Wolverine, but he didn't have the powers already? What? Okay. So he wakes back up, he comes back to life, and he goes ham on all of Danny Houston's goons. Pretty cool. Definitely the best part of the movie, this last act till the ending, which is pretty stupid. So he reads this text after he kills these goons. It's from the Swedish goon of Danny Houston's, and it reveals that Danny Houston's going to be at this opera house. And next scene, we finally see Eric putting on black ink to finally become the rock singer, Young Blood. I'm just joking. He finally becomes the Crow. And when you see him grab his katana. I guess he just had it lying around. So we see him at the opera house. He's slicing and dicing like Deadpool. It only took 80 minutes. He goes through all these guards. He even kills a guard by grabbing the guard's head and just placing it on the katana because it's through his body. So finally he takes off all these guards, and the main Danny Houston goons, the Swedes, are scared for their lives. He kills all of them. The one who actually killed Shelley tries to kill himself, but Eric slices his arm off, and the guy kneels, and he's like, "Ah!" And then I think he cuts his throat. Afterwards, we see the lady goon of Danny Houston, and she just tells Eric that Danny Houston's at his crib. It was a diversion. And Eric asks her, "Do you regret what you've done?" And she says, "Yes, kind of." And Eric fucking cuts her head off. And we see the wildest scene in which Eric has both of the Swedes' heads and he throws it to the audience. Like some shit that would happen in Crank. It's funny as hell. But at the same time, he sees a vision of Shelley just looking disappointed. So finally, we see Eric going to Danny Houston's crib, and he pulls up on Danny Houston. Danny Houston's like, "Ah, yes, I'm flesh and blood," you see? Because he cuts his hand open, and Eric is like, "You did this, you did all this is all you." Because Danny Houston claims that he's human and he had nothing to do with Shelley going off the rails and killing somebody, even though you literally see him whisper in Shelley's ear. So I don't know how he thought it was going to get out of that. But it's to distract Eric and whisper in Eric's ear to absorb his powers. But obviously it doesn't work. Danny Houston is now in the underworld. And we get this scene that's very brief of Eric and Danny Houston fighting each other, and of course Danny Houston gets caught in the water, so he gets pulled down by all these spirits that he killed, and that's the end of it. Danny Houston. So finally Shelley comes back to life, which I don't know if this happens in the comics or not. I've never read a Crow comic. So she finally reunites with Eric, but Eric tells her that, well, I sacrificed myself for you. Maybe we'll meet again in the afterlife. I love you, Shelley. And she gets revived by the guy that's in there. And the way the scene's set is that it looks like she overdosed, because obviously this whole movie they've been doing drugs. And I'm pretty sure the guy tells her that he fell hard for you, or he really did a lot for you. So we finally see Shelley. Apparently she's on tour or something, because she sings at a concert afterwards. And we get this lame narration from Eric talking about how we'll meet again, Shelley will live on, and that this is good enough for him. The end. Yeah. So let me get into the positives and negatives. The best thing about this movie is the soundtrack. That's insane. At first I was going to say that it's the only good thing about the movie, but when the action kicks in, that definitely was another positive. The action was insane because it just didn't fit the rest of the tone of the movie at all, which is one of the biggest problems with the movie, that the tone makes no sense at all. So yeah, this action, it's pretty cool. It's what the whole movie should have been. I guess Bill Skarsgård was good in this movie. He was honestly better in Boy Meets World. No, what's it called? Boy Kills World, right? That movie's way better, and his acting's way better in that, even though that movie's kind of corny. And honestly, I don't know how his career is going to survive after this, because that movie only made $3 million. And this movie only made $4 million opening weekend. So yeah, and this movie clearly has a bigger budget than that. Well, honestly, who knows? Those movies they both might have the same budget. Especially because the cast of that movie is way more people than in this movie. There's barely any people in this movie. I just realized that. Another positive, I do like the look of the movie. Mostly dark colors. What else? I can't even say Danny Houston was good. So let's get into the negatives. Oh, God. I mean, the dialogue of this movie is fucking horrible. It's written like suicidal 14-year-olds from 2015 wrote this movie. Like, holy shit. Not even 2015, like 2020 now. The chemistry between Billy Skarsgård and Fucka Twigs is absolutely terrible. Honestly, if they were actually serious about this movie, they would have casted an actress like Georgina Campbell or whoever, but not Fucka Twigs, who apparently was in Honey Boy. So maybe she can act, who knows, but it wasn't shown in this movie. Another negative I got is Danny Houston has nothing to do in this movie, so he's just Danny Houstoning around. So my biggest problem with the movie is definitely the tone. It's so inconsistent because the whole movie, it starts off as mopey and Lil Peep fan-esque, and then the last 30 minutes, he's the Punisher. It makes no sense. The whole movie, they should have just ripped off the original, because this movie is not even a remake. It's just adaptation of comic book. They should have just did the exact same thing as the original Crow, instead of this weird emo murder mystery that someone who watched a Gregor Rocky film once thought Gregor Rocky was like, what the fuck is this? The whole movie, Eric is just moping around. He's like, yeah, it's my fault, Shelly. Even when he was with Shelly, the whole movie, all they're doing is getting coked out, or they're laying around, pilled out. I'm shocked they didn't do heroin in this movie. Like, fuck. Because Billy Skarsgard and Fucka Twigs walk around this whole movie like they're Sid and Nancy or Amy Winehouse and her ex, who she wrote Back to Black about. They just do drugs and fuck the whole movie. Like, what the fuck? How is this romance to the level of Shakespeare, which is what this movie's trying to claim? Because even the guy who brings him back to life, he's like, when your true love dies in front of you, a love that can never be reborn. The soul doesn't die. Like, what the fuck is he talking about? These motherfuckers seem like two drug addicts that met in rehab, and they're like, oh shit, we're lovers, blah, blah, blah. And they wouldn't even last like 2 weeks after they got in rehab, because they only fucked because they were in rehab. They had nothing else to do. That's what this couple seems like. Instead of this Romeo and Juliet-esque love, star-crossed lovers approach that this movie thinks it's doing, but it's not. It's crazy. I haven't even gotten to who directed this movie. Motherfucking Rupert Sanders, the guy who Kristen Stewart cheated on Robert Pattinson with, the director of Snow White and the Huntsman and Ghost in the Shell. I only saw Snow White and the Huntsman. I never saw Ghost in the Shell. But I'm shocked at how dumb this movie is. It really is. I just can't believe it. Nothing really happens. I see people trying to defend the movie. You're only hating on it because you like the original. Who gives a fuck if they like the original or not? This movie just stinks. This movie isn't good. It has some cool shit in it. That's really all I have to say about this movie. I want to give it a 4.5 out of 10. That's being nice. Honestly, I'd probably give it a 4. But thanks for watching and listening to the podcast. Go like, comment, and subscribe. Go rate the podcast 5 stars. That's all I gotta say. Bye.